And like, why do you think that that is? Is it because of the visual aspect, or like, what is it about documentaries that like can have that effect where like instead of maybe like a print story or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's the visual. I think it's the use of music, the use of sound, the way we connect humanly with each other. It's a more immersive experience if you're watching it in a theater, not necessarily if you're watching it on your cell phone. But you know, you're caught up into that story, and if it's done well, it really draws you into a world, another world, a world of somebody who's suffering, or somebody who, you know, it can be a funny world. It can be somebody who's dealing with something in an entertaining way, but there's an emotional, visceral reaction to visual storytelling that you don't get necessarily in print. And certainly we've all read books that have made us laugh out loud, or magazine articles that have been wrenching, but that visual um, way of storytelling is very effective in emotionally connecting. So I often tell my students, you know, don't try to get across all the information in the film. Use the film to connect emotionally, to motivate, to get the audience to go to the website to get the information about the topic. You know, make
Right.
them care. That's what film is good at, making people care.
Okay. And like, you know, what is this importance or significance of documentary films, and like why do people spend so much money trying to like put these issues into
Well, I think
films?
there are different kinds of documentary films. I mean, I was at National Geographic for almost a decade, and we had a mission. National Geographic is an educational, at its core, it has an educational mission. So to educate people about different cultures, about different issues, about environmental issues, about wildlife, about archaeological, history, heritage, historical events. So there was an educational, underlying educational mission um, in the programming that we did there. By comparison, Discovery is a for-profit. It gets a little complicated because Geographic now has a for-profit side, and its TV is part of that. But at its core, it's still a foundation. Discovery doesn't have an educational mission per se. They call themselves nonfiction entertainment, and they make programming that appeals to viewers that will rate well. Now, they still like to do nonfiction programming. They do a lot of wildlife. They do some excellent programming, but they're not motivated at their core by an educational mission. So there's some differences in what documentary is perceived as, and it's changing a lot right now in terms of from how it's distributed, how it's made, to how it's distributed. So you're gonna have to remind me what you asked me, because I
Yeah,
don't
no, that
remember.
actually that actually leads into my next questions really well, and that is like what's kind of the state of the industry right now, and how is that, like, you say there's a difference between like for profit and not for profit, and that's kind of coming to butt heads at the moment, and can you explain that a little more, or like, I mean, how is those like two
Yeah.
paradigms like working, or
You know, it's interesting. Let me just loop back to the idea of what documentary. You know, the if you're an independent documentary filmmaker, you're going to be motivated primarily by trying to make a film that changes something, that gives a voice to people who don't have a voice, that makes people more aware of a situation, whether that's, you know, Aaron Brockovich and the pollution that was happening in, or Four Little Girls, Spike Lee's film about four little girls who were killed in civil rights during the civil rights era. You know, there's an independent filmmaking kind of credo of trying to, you know, help people get their stories out there, because it's going to make a difference if we as a society know those stories. We'll become, you know, more, you know, we'll be able to act, we'll be able to become a better, healthier society, whatever it is. The for-profit world increasingly is not calling itself documentary, it's calling itself nonfiction entertainment, factual entertainment, and it's for-profit, right? So you have your reality programming, you have contest reality programming, you have host-driven nonfiction entertainment that may be about wildlife, but it's really more about how entertaining the host is. So that's a different kind of motivation than you have if you're an independent documentary filmmaker with a mission to change the world, you know, with an ideological mission. So there's a profit kind of motivation, or there's an ideological motivation, and I think those are the two paradigms that we're seeing come into play today.
So what do you make of, say, Planet Earth or the new Life series on Discovery, which like is for profit, but has done more, say, for environmental causes than many other documentaries?
Now, I think that's an excellent question. Both Planet Earth, before that, what was it called? Blue
Blue
Planet,
Planet.
and then Planet Earth, and the Life series, and all on Discovery, but they're made by BBC, but distributed by Discovery. National Geographic's Migration series. There's some wonderful high-end programming that's being done that really does make a difference. And why? Because it's beautiful and it makes us care. So it's interesting that today anybody can pick up a flip cam and film something and edit together a little documentary and stick it on YouTube. But when we see exquisite cinematography like that, and if you look at which films really stand out over the decades, often it's because they're beautifully filmed. That impacts us and makes us care about our world. We see this beautiful world, and we realize, and that world may not be around that much longer if we continue to pollute it or whatever the environmental issue is. So it makes us care about the world, or care about, because we're being taken into the world of a certain animal, care about that animal. So, I think those films are very effective. They're very expensive, but economically they stay around for a long time. So, it's a business model that seems to be working.
I went to the Environmental Film Festival, as I said, and I interviewed and talked to some people afterwards, and I definitely got the sense that, especially at the film festival, that a lot of the people that are there are already, care about the issue. And so what do you say to the notion that like a lot of these films are already preaching to the choir, or preaching to the converted, and like how does a filmmaker that doesn't want to get mired in that, like how does he gain a wider audience?
That's a very good question. I had an interesting conversation with a student the other day who came into my office and said she wants to make a film about peace. That's a huge topic. Okay, so how do you make a film about peace? She said, well, I'm going to interview all these religious leaders and different people. I'm going to interview all these people about their thoughts about peace. I said, so that tells me you're doing a film that's all talking heads. That's not going to connect emotionally. How are you going to really grab a general audience? How do you take a topic like peace and make it really resonate with a general audience, with even an audience that either doesn't care or thinks that war is fine because we're protecting our country. So how do you reach those audiences? And we had an interesting brainstorming about it. If you look at what's most popular today, reality programming, maybe you figure out a reality series. You put young people from different religious backgrounds in a house together and make them live together for a month. Like whatever that reality series is called. Maybe you take a form that's popular today and you use that to get at a topic. Humor, documentary humor. There should be many more documentary comedies because humor just isn't used, in documentary, I think, as much as it could be. So can you reach people through the entertainment, through the popular forms? That's one way of trying to reach a broader audience. Another way is to make the story transcend and connect on a human level, no matter what the person's background is, no matter what their belief system is.